Hello, welcome back to Saturday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where today I'm going to try and cheer myself up from this dreadful weather by trying this puzzle from Jonas Gleim, the brilliant German puzzle maker. And he sent me an email suggesting we had a go at this on the channel because he was very pleased of how pretty the grid looked. And I'm not surprised. It's incredible that this is a puzzle. It's just gorgeous. Look at this, a sort of bow and arrow configuration here. He's just lost in admiration. No given digits at all. Jonas says that he doesn't think this is too difficult, but he's said that to me before in emails, and I've really struggled in the live solves. So I'm hoping that this won't be too difficult, but we shall have to see. Now, you may be wondering, if you're new to the channel, what do all of these funny notations mean in the grid? Well, there are two types of Sudoku variant going on here. One of them is the thermometer, which are these grey things here that look like thermometers or bent thermometers. The way these work is you've got to put the smallest digit along the thermometer nearest to the bulb end. So if this was a 3, for example, this would have to be a number higher than a 3. It doesn't have to be a 4, could be a 5, but it has to be bigger than a 3. So if this was 3 and this was 5, this then has to be bigger than 5, etc. So you just go up along the length of the thermometer. Now the arrows are interesting. The way these work is that this square here has to be the sum of the cells along the arrow pointing away from the cell. So these 3 cells have to sum to equal that one. These 3 cells have to sum to equal this one. And in this central row, which is certainly a very interesting row, as I was typing it into the software, I was thinking about this row. These 2 squares have to be viewed as a single number. So let's imagine we put, 31 in here. What we would be a 3 and a 1. What we'd be saying is read this number as 31. In other words, these 7 cells would have to add up to 31. And the quick among you will immediately realize that's totally impossible. But if you want to try the puzzle, please do click on the link under the video. That should take you to our webpage where you can have a try. And with that, I'm now going to try myself. Now, as I said, as I was looking at this and creating it, this row is pretty restricted. And the reason is that any Sudoku grid, if you add up the numbers from 1 to 9, which obviously we're going to have in this row, we know they're going to equal 45. So that does give us a bit of a restriction if we think about these 7 digits and what they sum to, because we're always going to be able to back into the value that we would expect to find in these 2 digits. So what do I mean by that? Let's imagine we make these 7 cells as low as we possibly can. How would we do that? Well, we'd have to put the numbers 1 to 7 in these cells. So we'd miss out the 8 and the 9. Now 8 and 9 add to 17, so I would therefore know that these cells here would have to add up to 28. 45 minus 17 is 28. So I would expect to see 2 and 8 like this in this area here. But I know that to create the value 28, I've missed out the 8 and the 9 from the row. So I need an 8 and a 9 in these 2 cells, and I definitely haven't got that. So this is an issue, and it's going to give us a start, I think. This can never be a 2. As 2, 8 clearly doesn't work. 2, 9 doesn't work either. 2 and 9 is 11. 45 minus 11 is 34. So we're definitely not seeing 34 if we put 29 in these 2 cells. So this is not a 2. I suspect... Actually, can it be a 4? No, it can't be a 4 either. So if this is a 4, let's put a 1 in here just to think about it. So 4 plus 1 is 5. Therefore, these cells are going to sum up to 40, because 45 minus 5 is 40. But we need them to add up to 41, and they don't. Now, as I try other digits in this position, I'm just going to move further away from where I need to be, because 4 plus 2 is now 6. 6 minus 45 is 39. Definitely not 42. So in fact, this square here must be a 3. And this square must be a 6. 3 plus 6 is 9. 45 minus 9 is 36, and that's what we need it to be. Now, as we vary this digit, we will just break the sum. So, if we try and make this a 7 or an 8, for example, 3 plus 8 is 11. 45 minus 11 is 34. Definitely not 38. So this is a 6. 3 and 6. Now, so we do know the contents of these 7 cells, but I'm not really seeing. Okay, I see something. These squares look. Yeah, okay, so there's an interesting sort of relationship between the yellow highlighted cells now, because the higher I make this digit, the more I give myself a problem in these squares. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's put a big number in there. So this could be a 5. Let's try a 5. And you'll see it just totally breaks, because we need to increase along this thermometer. So 5, 6, 7, 8, that would make that square a 9. But this square needs to be the sum of these 3 squares. So we can never have a big number in this position. In fact, the biggest number we could have would be 7. And that's if both of these squares was a 1. So if this was 7, 6, 5, 4, this square has to be a 1, 2, or a 3. Oops. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a 5, 6, or a 7, which means this is a 5, 6, or a 7 because there's symmetry. But hang on. Because there is symmetry, this gets quite interesting. This gets quite interesting because if I do put a 3 in here, because one of these extremities will be a 7, the other one needs to be at least 7, i.e. it has to be 8 or more, but we know it can't be 8 or more, so that can't be a 3. Now, I'm just wondering also, can this be a 2? Because if this is a 2, what would happen is that we would have to have a 6, 7 pair in these 2 squares. Now, that means that one of these numbers is a 7. Now, if one of them is a 7, no, this breaks. This breaks. Let me show you why. If one of these is a 7 and this is a 6, we know that as soon as we get a 7 on one of these extremities, in order to keep this number below 10, let's make it 9 therefore, we have to repeat the 1s along this sum. But how can we do this now? We can't. If this is, the best we can do is make that an 8. But now the only way this works is if we have 2 1s again and we break in multiple ways the puzzle. So actually, rather incredibly, this square has to be a 1. Right, so and I'm not sure, is it ever possible that this is a 7? If this is a 7, we know that that forces this. Oh, it's so clever, this. This is so clever. The symmetry is so important because now, let's try and keep this low as we can. It gives us the most flexibility. So if we put a 5 in here, look, the best I can do for this digit is an 8. That gives me enough flexibility to put a 2 in one of these squares, but the other square has to be a 1. So there's always a 1 in one of these 2 positions. So in fact, neither of these squares can ever be a 7, and this is a 5, 6 pair. Now That is cool. Now, so that means these squares must be 1, 2, or 3. Is it possible that this is a 7? No, it's not. It's also, if we have 5 here, 1, 1, and made this a 7, this is a 6 now, but I'm not allowed to use a 1 in either of these squares. Therefore, the best I could do would make them a 2. 6 plus 2 plus 2 is 10. So this can never be 7. This is an 8, 9 pair. How do you come up with this? I mean, it's just stunning. We can't have a 3. None of these can be 3s. I think. If we make one of these a 3, let's make this one a 3 just to show you what I mean. If that's a 3, the only way I can keep these 3 squares to being 9 or less is if this is a 5 now and this is a 1. But now this has to be a 6 and this has to be an 8 because that adds up to 9, and now I need to put a 1 in one of those squares again and that breaks. Holy moly. So this, in fact, there are no 3s in there. It's taken me a very long time to work this out, but these have to be 1s and 2s. And actually, this could be 5, 2, 2 here, because that could then be 6, 1, 1. That would work. And this could be 5, 2, 1. And then this could be 6, 1, 2 in the other order. So actually, we now are stuck, I think. But, look, we've got a 1, 2 pair there. So, where can the 1 and the 2 go in this block? They can't go here. Therefore, those squares must be a 1 and a 2. Now, that square must be restricted because it's the lowest number on the thermometer and it can't be a 1, 2, or a 3. And it can't be a 6 because that would be 7, 8, 9 broken. So this square is only 4 or 5. So if this is 4, 5, 6, 7, the minimum value of this is 8. So this is an 8 or a 9. That means that must be 5 or 6. No, sorry. Yeah, that's right, 5 or 6. That must be 6 or 7. That must be 7 or 8. Ah, but there's 8s here. So that must be a 7 actually, which means that can't be 7. So that's 6, 5, 4. 6 sees that square. That's a 5 now. That's a 6. Now that means, look, this is the sort of most minimal form of the thermometer. That must be 4. That must be 3. That must be 2. So this must be 3, 4, 5. That's just a... Oh, there's a 2 there. That's a 1 and a 2 there. In this column, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Therefore, these 3 cells, 7, 8, 9, and they are on a thermometer. So we can actually disambiguate. That must be a 9, 8, 7. Nine, 8 here, 8, 9 here, so there needs to be an 8 and a 9 in those squares. This square has to be a 1 or a 2, therefore this square has to be an 8 or a 9. And now that square's got to be a 3 because of this 3 here, therefore this square is a 1 or a 2. 3, 4. Yeah, okay, now these 3 squares have got to be 4, 5, and 7 to complete this box. Okay, hang on a sec. I'm just being shouted at. 1 sec. Right, sorry about that. Now, where was I looking in this column? So we've got these two squares have got to be 3 and 6 because we've got all the numbers in those squares already. There's a 6 there, so that's a 6. That's a 3. That square can't be a 6. That can only be 4 or 5. 2, 3, 7, 5. And oh, hang on, look, 4's here and this 4. So there is a 4 up there. Now there's a 3 there. Oh, hang on, no, there's a 4 here. Yeah, look, this 4 rules out a 4 from those squares. So there's a 4 in one of these 3 positions. Therefore, this square can't be a 4. That's a 4. Now, these squares cannot include a 3 because of this 3. So these must be 1 and 2. Therefore, they must be in that order. This 1 sees that. That's a 2. So I was about to fill in this digit, but I'm not actually sure that's... No, I can't. This could still be 1 or 2. Ah, but the 2 sees that. That's going to be 1. 1, and the 1's there, and this 1. So that square's a 1. That square's a 3 because of these 3's. And that must be an 8 or a 9, therefore, because we need an 8 or a 9 to complete the row. 1, 2 here, 1, 2 here. So those two squares have got to be 1 and 2, and there's a 1 there. So in fact, we know the order. That's 1. That's 2. 1, 1. Oh, this is very nice. This is like the symmetrical opposite of what happened up here. So look, there's a 1's in one of those two squares. So there's 1 in one of these two positions. Now this 2, you can see this square can't be a 2 because of the thermometer. So the 2 is pushed up as well. And now that... Oh, this is very clever. Look at this. Normally in a Sudoku, this would be broken, because this is a pattern that you can't see, because there would be, you wouldn't be able to tell which way round the 1's and 2's were intended to go. They could go either way round, but here, because of this summation, this 8, 9 can resolve the 1, 2 pattern, which means that I think there's going to have to be a way for these cells to resolve which of these is an 8 and which of these is a 9. Now, I don't know how to do that now, but that's certainly, I think, the way the puzzle will develop. Now, 1, 2, so this square's got to be a 4 or a 5. There's a 5 there, so that's a 4, that's a 5. Therefore, there's a 5 in one of these two squares. This square must be a 4, because there's a 4 up here, and these 4's interacting. This square has to be a 1, because actually I could have seen that before. There's all these 1's dotted around the grid. One of these squares must be a 4 now. This square has to be a 2, because we need to put a 2 along this row, and there's a 2 there, stopping it from being in either of those squares. So that's a 2. These two squares are 8 and 9, and they're on a thermometer, so we know the order. The 9 must be higher. 9, 8. Now this 8, look at this puzzle, look at it. There can't be an 8 here, therefore there is an 8 in one of those squares, therefore that square up there must be a 9. Nine here, there must be a 9 therefore. There's a 9 in one of these two squares. And in fact, there's a 6. This 6 is ruling out 6. So there's a 6 in, oops, 6 in one of those squares as well. So these two squares must be 7 and 8 to complete the box. 6, 9. There must be a 6 in one of these two squares. And these three squares are 3, 7 and 8, look, and there's a 7, 8 up there, so that's a 3. These two squares must be 7 and 8. These two squares must be 5 and 6 to complete the row. These squares must be 3 and 7 to complete this row, and there's a 3 there. So again, I could have done that earlier. 3 and 7 there. This 7 means there's a 7 either, oops, either there or there. Four must be in, now this can't be a 4 anymore because it needs, this square needs to be bigger than a 5 or a 6, so the 4 must be in one of these two positions. Now that's cool, isn't it? Look, we've got 4s here and 4s here, same rows of the grid. So neither of these squares can be a 4, that must be the 4. Oh, hang on, 2s, look, these 2s are all fixed. Oh, that's quite nice, isn't it? Look. So I think that's locking a 2 into that square. So the moment I do that, that's got to be a 4, that's got to be a 4. Now, if this is a 5 now, we've got a problem, because what do I put into this square? I can't put anything into it, so this must be a 7. That's a 5. This square, 1, 2, 3, oh god, I thought I'd broken it then, but I haven't. There is, it can be a 5, thank goodness. But look, these 5s now force a 5 into one of those two squares. Now, we can't put a 5 here, because if we do, this square has to be lower than a 5, and it can't be, so that's a 5. One of these two squares is a 5. These two squares must be 8 and 9 to complete this row, and there's a 9 up there, so 9, 8. The 8s interact, there must be an 8 in one of these two positions. Oh, look, and this square. Can this square be a 5? And the answer is no, because of this tiny little thermometer. If this is a 5, I need this square to be a 1, 2, 3 or 4, and it can't be. So that is not 5, therefore this is 5, and that is going to unwind all our pencil marks. 5, 7, 6, 8. This 5 means that's 5 and that's 6. This 8 forces 8, 7 like that. This square here must be a 6. These two squares have got to be what then? 7 and 9. Look, this resolves this as well. This can't be a 9, because if it is, it breaks the thermometer. That's a 7, that's a 9. Now look, the 9 is going to fix everything. That's a 9, that's an 8. So now this sum must be a 2, that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 1. This 9 fixes that 9, that fixes a 6 here. That means there's a 6 there. Now we still need to put a 3 into this position. So you can see we need 7 and 8 into those squares, and there's an 8 here. So that's 7, that's 8, that's 8, that's 7. Check. Yes! What a puzzle. Absolutely beautiful puzzle. not easy. How long was the video? 25 minutes. Oh my goodness. But I loved it. I thought that was exceptional. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let us know in the comments. Do give it a tick if you enjoyed it. We think the algorithm sort of respects that a bit. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.